Welcome to the Property Buyer Podcast, where we explore the world of residential and commercial real estate to help you make better decisions about buying, selling, or investing in all types of property. Join me, Rich Harvey, CEO of propertybuyer.com.au and multi-award-winning buyer's advocate. Our podcast features expert interviews, market trends and insights, and practical tips for navigating the complex world of Australian real estate. Whether you're a home buyer, a seasoned property investor, commercial buyer, developer, or simply curious about the property market, our podcast is for you. Join us as we share our knowledge, strategies, and experience and help you achieve your property goals. Welcome to another edition of the Property Buyer Podcast. Today, I'm joined by Peter Diamantidis, Director of Ray White Unlimited Group, one of Western Sydney's most respected real estate professionals. Peter's been in the industry over 20 years and witnessed the transformation of Western Sydney firsthand, from affordable outer suburbs to one of Australia's fastest growing regions, particularly with the new airport coming online. He brings deep local insight into where the real opportunities are for both home buyers and investors. Peter, welcome to the Property Buyer Podcast.
Thank you for having me.
It's great to have you on. Look, before we dive in, we've got a tradition where I'm going to throw you a little philosophical quote, and I'd love to get your perspectives on that quote. And the thought today, Peter, is start where you are, use what you have, do what you can. And that's from Arthur Ashe. What do you take from that quote?
Well, I would say just whatever you have, just run with it. Like every day is different, in my opinion. But the way that I'll be taking it is just whatever you have, take 100% of it and run forward with it.
Yeah, love it. Yeah, I think a lot of us, especially in the Western world, we're ungrateful for what we actually have. Mate, you just need to take a trip to Manado in Indonesia or the Philippines and just to see firsthand what poverty can do to countries. And, honestly, we are so blessed here. So use what you have, do what you can.
Yes.
Love it. All right, let's get straight into some questions. I want to ask you first up, Peter, what was your first job in real estate? And I guess, how did you get into the industry in the first place?
Yeah, well, this real estate was my first job. So, but started at the age of 15. I had to do work experience for a week at a real estate office for business studies. And I actually stayed at that one place for 18 years.
Wow. Amazing. 15, you were young, mate. Well done.
Yeah, year 10. I was at the back of Mount Druitt, Tregear, and my mum said you have to do work experience. I had to do it. I wasn't really good at, in the books and stuff. I was aiming to be actually a plumber. Yeah. Got into real estate and stayed there for 18 years at the one place.
Wonderful. What do you love about your job? What do you love about real estate?
I think every day is a different day. Like if you look at your calendar, you go, okay, well, I've got an appointment at 9, finish at 5. It just, the curveballs that come your way, like this will happen today, that will happen, and you can be a problem solver. And me being, a selling principal as well, I'm not just sitting behind a desk. I'm actually out in the, on the, the front line, and it just, every day is different. I just love it. Like I just don't, I'm not looking at my time. Whatever happens, but it's just a different thing every day.
That's fantastic. There's a joke, you're like a CEO of your group and I'm the CEO of Property Buyer, but there's another acronym for us. It's called CPS, Chief Problem Solver.
Yes, correct.
And I try to get my team, instead of coming to me with the problem, don't just come to me with the problem. Come to me with the problem and 3 suggestions on way to find out a solution. And that way you get them to think about it, So people are just lazy sometimes, So, look, you've been selling properties for so many years, but you would have witnessed, a major change in Western Sydney. What have you seen? How would you describe the transformation of Western Sydney, say the last 20 years? What was it and what's it like today?
Yeah. Well, like I said, this is my 23rd year. So if I start back, say 23 years ago, getting into an area which, my main core area was St. Mary's. St. Mary's now, as you know, is on the fringes of where the new airport is and things like that. So 23 years ago, it wasn't, how can I say as good. We had, how can I say in a nice way, like a lot of social housing in the area which, wasn't looked after, empty shops in the street. There was a lot of that happening. And then Of course, fast forward, you mentioned, airport is coming along. Things started to pick up. You had your big players like, I think it was, Amazon and a few others, DHL, big companies coming out west, buying property and creating their factories and that. So a lot of the jobs started to get created around us. So, people in the local area didn't have to travel far from for jobs. Mm-hmm. And then, of course, on a price point of view, of course, from when I started selling properties at 150,000, the same properties I'm selling now for probably around 1.5 million. And I know it's a long time, but, we've seen a big change of, being an area where it was just full of investors to now, 50-50. It could be an owner-occupier, it could be an investor. So a lot more people moving into the area.
A lot of people kind of judge Western Sydney as being, as you say, you've got to be careful with your words, but more the down and outs or the lower demographic. But what do you think is the biggest misconception that people still have about Western Sydney?
Well, I say to people, look at me. I'm the guy that went to Wayland High School, went to Tregear Public, and if I said, hey, I've got, more than $50 million worth of properties and cars and whatever else, I came from Western Sydney, do you know what I mean? So, and that's what I always quote to people, when people come out here to buy properties, and again, I'm on that front line, and they say to me, I heard it's rough, or I heard it's this, and I said, what about Balmain in the 70s? Was that rough?
Yeah, exactly.
Do you recall that? I wasn't born, but I was told by my parents that, that was a rough area. Look at it now. So, and it's the thing, people come out here and I said, if you can afford more and you want to be, in eastern suburbs and that, go for it. But you're going to get value, you're going to get good return, you're going to have good capital growth. Look at the last 5 or 10 years. And you've got to push that through. And I said, in any area that you go in, it may not be 100%.
Yeah, you're absolutely right. I think people, unfortunately, to their own detriment, continue to have that long-held judgment about an area. I mean, even on the northern beaches, Narrabeen used to be called, a real druggy area. And, people still have that perception, but it's not like that today. It's vastly different. And, I know Western Sydney's got some beautiful communities, some wonderful areas where it's great to raise a family. So, yeah. Tell me a bit about the impact of the Western Sydney Airport, the Nancy Bird Airport, right? It's like a once-in-a-generational project. What impact are you seeing have it on particularly buyer demand at the moment?
So buyer demand is definitely there. So I would say the buyer demand is probably driven a lot more by investors rather than the first home buyers. I think if we categorise both of them, if you've got your investor, of course they're looking at the maps, the flight paths, what's happening around about the airport. But it's not just the airport. Like we mentioned before, is the big companies that have come in play. The freight terminal, which is now at Samaris in the last 5 years. The interchange, the airport. There's so many factors. So the buyers are looking at that and seeing on, the growth and what potentially could also happen. But then on the flip side of that with pricing is the first home buyers are saying, well, you know what, I want to buy my first home, but this is going to be an investment later down the track. So this is a good area also to buy in. So you're getting a double whammy. The investors pushing prices, and then you've also got the first home buyers trying to enter, an affordable market.
Excellent. Yeah, there's definitely both people buying out there. We're helping both home buyers and investors in those markets quite substantially. And there's really the new, I guess, what you call Bradfield City. How do you see that kind of reshaping the economic map of Sydney over the next 10 years?
Yeah, well, to be very honest with you, Richard, I've only been really looking at that a little bit and just seeing on how that's all going to happen. And to me, and I might be wrong here, there's a lot of apartments and all that. And of course, I always say to people, even when they buy property, when you got like those new estates where you've got land releases, I say to them, if you're buying the first release, before you get to the 10th or 20th or 15th release, you've already got instant equity in your property where it's good to buy it. And I've personally done it myself in buying investments where, back in the day, it was like Denham Court, and everyone's like, oh, you're buying a 250 square metre block of land. Look at it now. It's the same thing with Bradfield City. I still feel that if you can get in there to buy, even if it's an apartment or anything, I think it's going to do really, really well if it's a long-term hold.
Yes, exactly. Your property's always better. People that are short-term traders tend to make losses because of the transaction costs. But as you say, if you've got a 10-year horizon, you're going to do well. So tell me a bit about, I guess, with all of this economic activity out there, are locals seeing changes in new jobs? Is there new sort of infrastructure? Is there new lifestyle options? Tell me a bit about that sort of change in the dynamic there.
Yeah. And the good thing about it is, as well, Richard, I was out this way where I lived here for many, many years and I was brought up here. So, and I look at it from my point of view is, let's say, just Penrith. Penrith is one of the surrounding suburbs. Now, when I was around here, you might have had maybe 2 good eateries and that's it. Now you've got all the big chains. They're all in Penrith. You've got so much, like Penrith itself, you won't even have to leave from it because of all the infrastructure and what they've done. Now, from living there as a family, it's great. But then if you're looking at it from a job perspective, how many more jobs are out here? And I'm seeing it. Like, we manage over 3,000 rental properties. And if you look at all the applicants, they are now working out here. They're not like back in the day it was, I'm applying in some areas, but I have to, I work in Central or I work in North Sydney in an office. All the jobs are now in Western Sydney, or even at, like, worst case, Parramatta. So again, for people, like families, it's great, but then it's also for job security and that, it's also a bonus.
Tell me, I'd be fascinated to ask you too, just on the applications you're seeing in rentals, what sort of incomes are people earning? Because incomes are a big determinant of property prices, right? But what are the renters earning as an income? Right?
Yeah, so normally, like if you had just like, I say, a standard home, it could be in some areas, and it could be, let's say, $650 a week, $700 a week. They're probably earning, like, if you got total incomes, probably around that maybe 130, 140,000 on average. That's probably our average. And then of course you might get, more if they're based on commissions and, overtime and stuff like that.
Yeah, okay. That's very affordable. I've got some questions about, like, investors looking to take advantage of the whole Western Sydney market. What do you think generally makes Western Sydney a really solid long-term investment play? What's the fundamentals driving that market?
Well, the fundamentals, of course, we mentioned is the airport, but it's not just the airport, it's what comes with the airport.
Exactly.
What else? The hotels, the hotel chains. Like I was only, being notified recently. I think Meriton are trying to buy sites out this way. And if you've got people like Meriton and these bigger companies looking at doing things, of course, what's that going to do? It's going to create more jobs. It's going to create more housing. And these are big things that are out here for investors. Now, even if you're an investor and you might go, I only want to spend a certain amount of money, you can still buy something and you can actually look at, what has been the growth in the last 3 years. I always say to investors, look at the last 12 months, look at 3 years, and you can then foresee on what growth that you're going to potentially have in those areas in the next coming years.
You mentioned hotels being built. Actually, one of my friends is a project manager building the hotel that the Perich family are building out towards Oran Parkway at the moment, because there's lots of demand out there. So you obviously know a lot of pretty cool suburbs. Like, you've got such an awesome and intimate knowledge. I'm curious to know, if you're happy to share, which pockets or suburbs do you believe are, like, what I would call undervalued right now? And really have that infrastructure push. What do you think is undervalued and what do you think is going to rise a bit faster than the average?
So what I've always looked at is you always get your hot suburb, and the hot suburb at the moment is St. Mary's, and we all know that. St. Mary's is one of the, you look at all the articles, you get Channel 7 ringing me, you got Channel 9, we do all this. Even today I've got Paul Caddock or whatever coming from Channel 7 to do an interview about St. Mary's. Yeah. Now, if you look at it, if you buy in St. Mary's, will you go wrong? No, you'll still gain, but look at the smaller fish. I call them smaller fish. Look at areas like Werrington, Cambridge Park, Werrington County, Werrington Downs. They're areas where some people are thinking, it might be too far, but technically it's probably 5 to 7 minute drive, but you might be able to save around $100,000 off your purchase price or even more, but get the same rent return.
Yes. Yeah.
Now,
Go on. I was going to say, as you know, a lot of my staff have been buying off you for years, and we used to buy a lot of properties out at St. Mary's. Remember back in the day we were buying 300K and we were putting a granny flat on the back for 90,000 and getting a 10% yield. I mean, that was the golden days. But, that St. Mary's area, we think it's absolutely awesome. But what you're telling our listeners here right now is don't just look at what's called hotspot. Look at the surrounding areas. You get that ripple effect of growth. As you say, Cambridge Park, Warrington Downs, like, you're going to get growth, even better growth, got a lower entry point and getting a similar yield, right?
Oh, 100%. I've done it in the past. I remember even myself when, Parramatta was going up and up, I ended up buying in areas like Granville or surrounding suburbs because I could save, nearly, $100,000, maybe get a little bit less rent return, but I knew that it hasn't peaked. And now I'm seeing the suburbs like those Cambridge Park, the Cambridge Gardens, even areas like Penrith. Penrith used to be a lot more expensive than some areas. It's now the other way around. So, eventually it will gel together, but if you want to save money, if you want to buy, I call it value buying, these are the smaller suburbs that you should be looking in because I think they've still got a lot more in them.
Is there any other little nuggets you want to share with us apart from the ones you've just mentioned that you think?
I would say that's still the Mount Druitt area, the surrounding areas, the ones that we used to buy, if you remember, at $200,000.
Yep.
Those now, you could probably still pick something up in that maybe high sevens, early eights, which, again, if I said to you and to any of your listeners and said, hey, I can get your house under $850,000 and get you a return of, say, $550 a week, you're not going to really get anywhere in the metro area. But think of it, in this metro area, if you can still pick up something at that price, again, you can't go wrong. The average price, your median price is going to be just $1 million full stop in the whole of Sydney.
That's right. Yeah. Well, Domain just put out their report a couple of weeks ago saying median house price is now 1.75. It's huge.
Yeah, well.
Peter, I want to ask you about rental yields. So how do rental yields compare in the areas that you service around the West compared to the rest of Sydney, and what's driving that strength of the rental market?
Yeah, so we've got two types. I call it two types of yields. You've got your yields where if you buy, let's say an apartment, and I'm going to throw a few suburbs out there. Let's say you bought something in St Mary's, Mount Druitt, you're going to have a lot higher yield compared to a house in those areas. So typical unit, you could probably pick up, let's say, $400,000, and you could still get like $400 a week rent return. So it's awesome, especially with rates coming down. But then on the other hand is, you could buy that house for, say, $1 million in St Mary's, but you're only getting $600 a week return. So a lot of the savvy investors now are taking, similar to what we used to do back in the day with the granny flat idea, still do the granny flat. So, to help with yield, the granny flat might cost them $170,000 to $200,000, but they're now getting an extra yield of $450. So it's helping them to maintain repayments versus return, if you know what I mean.
Exactly. Yeah. Once you do, we've done a lot of that granny flat street. Even today, we're still doing it, and we're boosting returns from, like you say, like probably with a house, it's probably a 4% return, and we're getting probably up to 6%, gross return on the rentals now. So yeah.
Yes.
Have you noticed any more interstate or overseas investors showing interest in Western Sydney?
I'm not getting overseas technically, I'm not getting overseas investors that are, automatically coming, but we are starting to see a trend of a lot of buyer's agents now starting to, some that I've never heard of, some of them are just buying anything and anything. That's starting to become a bit of a trend in our areas now. But again, they're buying for people which are interstate. So I'm seeing, if you said to me out of any area other than, say, New South Wales on where they're coming from, I'd say Victoria. A lot of buyers are using those buyers agents to buy from Victoria in here into Western Sydney. That's being a big thing. But I would say most people are from Sydney, New South Wales, somewhere here, and if they're buying as an investment, or our big, let's say, buyers in Western Sydney are coming from that, say, Parramatta to maybe early inner west, like Stratfield, Concord area, and they're buying their first home out our way.
Interesting. Okay. Yeah. And I guess there's a lot of first home buyers all turning up at your opens at the moment. Now we've got this 5% deposit scheme, which is just putting fuel on the fire, right?
Yes.
What would be your advice for first time investors looking to get into the Western Sydney market, particularly before the airport opens?
So the big thing I've told buyers, and I try to educate them as well, is, when they'll see a property which comes onto the market, inspect the property ASAP. Our average days on the market for a house, in those suburbs I've mentioned to you, is sometimes less than a week on the market. So what we're seeing is a lot of buyers might wait till the Saturday inspection, or might wait until, when they're available. try to make time, even if you have to leave work early or something, to inspect that property with the agent. Try to push the agent to get in there early, because if you do wait till the Saturday inspection, at the moment our average number of people coming through are between 20 to 40 per inspection.
Wow, that's amazing.
And the issue we're finding is and this is the reason why us as agents are not really putting prices on properties anymore, because we don't know what they're going to achieve. And this is because, yes, it's great that the first home buyers have got this advantage, and I'll be very honest, if I was a first home buyer, I would be wanting to get into the market, but you need to get into the market sooner. A, yes, you've got the airport, but B, take advantage of the scheme, because like we've seen in the past with governments, sometimes the light switched on and sometimes the light can be switched off very, very fast.
Exactly.
So definitely take advantage of it.
Yeah, really good points, Peter. Thanks for that. I want to ask you a bit about the livability and I guess the lifestyle attraction of Western Sydney now. Tell me why you think more families are choosing to live in Western Sydney rather than commute from out of area.
Well, look at the space. You can still get, rather than living in an apartment in the inner west or in the, in a city, you can get land 500, 600 square metres. You can have your own backyard still. Even if you go to one of these new land subdivisions and even get a block of land for 300 square metres of land, you've still got land. So, and then you've got all the parklands, all the new schools that are getting built. So if you look at the maps on where all new schools are getting built, where are they? All in these new growth areas. They're not building new schools in, let's say, I don't know, just pick out a suburb, Surrey Hills, for example.
We appreciate you tuning in to the Property Buyer Podcast, and I hope that you're finding our expert interviews helpful. So that we can keep providing this information and growing our audience, we rely on word-of-mouth recommendations. If you found this information useful, could I please ask you to share this podcast with your friends, family and colleagues, and ask them to subscribe to the Property Buyer Podcast. It would be a big help, and we'd be very grateful for your support. Thanks once again for sharing the links. And now, let's get back to the podcast.
The comparison in Surrey Hills is, you can't build, let's say new schools out there. So all the new schools and infrastructure and everything is all happening out here. So, if you've got, a child at 3, 4, 5 years of age and they're now going into school, you've got brand new infrastructure, new equipment. And this is another attraction to families moving out west, because remember, go back 20 years ago, it used to probably take you an hour and a half to get into city. Now, on good days, with probably 45 minutes with all the new motorways, you can commute very, very easily.
Excellent. What do you would say the suburbs are that offer that sort of real affordability, that community spirit, and really good amenities? Like, what suburbs offer that best combination of those three things: affordability, community, and amenity?
There's probably so many to choose from, but I would say, areas like St Clair, Erskine Park, Claremont Meadows, even areas like Kingswood. The reason is that they're very close still to, not too far from, say, train stations, not too far away from motorways. They're good suburbs because, you're still getting an average of like 600 square metres of land on average.
Yep.
But you've also got good infrastructure, good schools. You've got choices. So you're not like, okay, well, I'm in St Clair, I've got one school. You might have 3 schools that you could pick from. So, I reckon there are probably a few key suburbs.
Yeah, and there's some pretty cool things out in the west. Like my son's a wakeboarder, so he often used to go out to, when he was learning to wakeboard, he'd go out to Cable's Wake Park at Penrith. Before he got his license, he'd take his wakeboard on the train for an hour and get out there and have fun, You've got Urban Surf. I can't remember which suburb that is. Remember the Urban Surf? Where's that located? That's
Urban Surf? No, I haven't heard of that one. Is that the one near the Regatta Centre? Is that the Regatta Centre?
It's the one where it's automatic waves, so people just surf there all day.
Yeah. I think it's the Regatta Centre.
And then you've got some fantastic shopping centres. I mean, it's really, the lifestyle really has evolved. And I think that's the thing you sort of picked up earlier in the podcast. You were saying that, you've seen a transformation where there might have been 1 or 2 cafes, and now there's multiples, I mean, I just look at how Parramatta has transformed, Peter. It's got so many diverse eateries there. It's amazing,
Yeah, and that's what people want. They want, good education. education. They want newer schools. They want, good eateries. You don't have to travel far for this stuff. So you've got it all there. And if I said to you, hey, you can buy a house for even let's say a really nice house, 1.2 million, 1.3 million, I'll get you a 2-story home. That's value for money still, if you look at it in the Sydney perspective.
Yeah. You mentioned some estates before where the land might be, 300 or 400 square metres. Are there any particular sort of housing or newer estates that really have lifted the region's image? Like has the Ponds been a big one? Has Oran Park been a big one? What are the major estates that have really...
Yeah. So there's been a few. I reckon out in Western Sydney, the biggest one has probably been an area called Caddons. Yeah. Caddons is next to an area called Claremont Meadows. But why that has probably lifted one of the, I would say that's probably one of the best selling estates, and they're still selling a lot of land there, is because it's got the best of everything. You've got new schools, you've got a new shopping centre, but then you're right on the motorway. So the motorway, as soon as you get onto that motorway, the first traffic lights that you're going to get if you're going into the city is George Street.
Wow.
That's the only traffic lights that you're going to get. So it's very favourable to people that commute, that still need to commute to Parramatta or go towards the city. But it's one of these things where you can still get 300-400 square metres of land. Even if you built a house and complete and everything, you're still under that 1.5 mil. And average, you can still get something maybe 1.3, which might be only 4 or 5 years old.
Fantastic. And you've also got University of Western Sydney. It's got its campus out there.
Yep, you got that. You got the Nepean Hospital. You're close to the new metro, and all the new metro stops now are there. So if you are at Caddons, that suburb, you will be 2 stops to the new airport. So you'll be less than 10 minutes by train.
Yeah, fantastic. That's so good. So you're talking about this connectivity thing. I reckon the metro is amazing. It's just, there's no timetable now. It's like every 5 minutes or something, or 10 minutes? How often? It's pretty.
Yeah. I think what I got told, I think it was every 7 minutes. But again, that was things are changing all the time. All I was told is from St Mary's, one way is approximately 14 minutes, and I think there's 2 stops that are at the airport, but 4 stops in total from St Mary's.
Amazing. So that's going to be a game changer. It's a bit like, I remember Borkham Hills before the M2 got built. When it got open, Borkham Hill prices jumped 30% in 1 year because it knocked 15 to 20 minutes off travel time. It was amazing.
Yeah.
So I think everyone's jumped on the infrastructure gravy train at the moment. So I think it's really changing how people, think about living out there. Because people used to think Western Sydney, it's too far out. But interconnected with the metro, with the highway, and now with this new airport, I think it's a game changer, don't you?
Oh, 100%. And then one thing we didn't probably touch on as well is St Mary's itself, and I keep bringing that to St Mary's because I think that's the major interchange. I think that's the connection to everything is there's still talks, if you look into it, in the Tullawong line eventually to be done. So meaning is St Mary's, of course, you change, you go towards Badgerys Creek, but there is another line that they've been talking about now for probably around 5 or 7 years, probably 7 years now, where they've been talking about doing another railway line connecting to St Mary's, coming from the northwest. So that could be another key part that could be very important for infrastructure, things that happen around that line, and that's definitely future, something will definitely happen.
You kind of answered my next question, which was which suburbs do you think will benefit the most once the airport is operational? So I think obviously St Mary's is one. Is there any other suburbs that will really kick off, do you think?
One suburb which I found a little bit, now again, there might be something that I don't know, but if you look at it, there's an area called Luddenham, which is right on the foot of the airport. Now, I believe that is still very good value if you can still get just a 600 square metre home. Now, of course, there might be maybe a little bit more noise being very close to the airport and stuff. But last time I checked, you can still get houses for under 1.2 million and you're less than 10 minutes to the airport by drive. So I think that's still good value. Or there's a new suburb, well, it's not a new suburb, but there's new land releases now getting done in an area called Orchard Hills. Now, Orchard Hills is near Caddons, that area that I mentioned before. And like I said, buying first, second, third, fourth releases, I've been told it's probably around a 2-year turnaround. I definitely see that there would be probably instant growth in those in that suburb.
Oh, fantastic tips, mate. This is great. I guess you've dealt with a lot of buyer's agents over the years, and you've obviously dealt with several people in my team. I guess what's it like working with buyer's agents? Do you think that using a buyer's agent like ourselves is a good thing to help people? What's your perception on that?
Oh, no, definitely. Like, if it depends, if you're time poor, and I'm a real estate agent, and I can comfortably say that I have used buyer's agents because, I'm time poor, I'm running 7 offices, I'm managing over 100 people. I'm not going to have time to inspect properties myself on a Saturday and things like that. So a buyer's agent definitely, if they do all the correct research on the properties, know their ins and outs. That's what I like about it. So, like as I said, Rich, back in the days when you had Stuart and you had all these other people, it's been 20 years since,
exactly.
And still to this day you've got Nikki that's working with it. She calls me all the time. She calls me at 7, 8 o'clock at night. Now that's good because, you don't have a 9 to 5 buyer's agent. You've got a buyer's agent that's trying to look for a good deal. And don't get me wrong, even with us doing high transactions and stuff like that, there is deals out there because some of our owners are like, no, Peter, I need it sold now. It needs to be sold off market. Contact, your best buyers. And who are they? You guys, of course, are one of them straight off the top. And I'll just say, hey, we've got 24 hours. We need a buyer. The lady's gone into a nursing home, whatever. We need it to be sold. They don't want to go on the market. And it's sold.
That's the deal.
So buyer's agents, definitely worth it. Do your research. Make sure they're reputable. There is a lot of, like I mentioned in the podcast, buyer's agents, which I've never heard of, operating from homes. I don't even know. And then, of course, what happens then is property sold, they've acted, we're left with the landlord. The landlord's got, no idea what he's bought or anything, and sometimes can end a little bit nasty. Yeah,
exactly. So you're absolutely right. Yeah, make sure they're qualified, they've got experience, they're members of Real Estate Buyers Agent Association, and follow a code of ethics is really important.
Yes.
I know you're a busy man. I've only got about 3 more questions for you before I let you go. I'm really curious to know, putting your crystal ball hat on, right, looking ahead, getting your vision goggles out, 5 to 10 years ahead, what do you think Western Sydney is going to look like as a place to live, to work and invest?
I reckon Western Sydney, like if you said to me 10 years from now, we're sitting at 2035. Of course, I believe that there'll be a lot of land which looks available now, which will be bought and developed. I still think that there's going to be so many little mini estates everywhere built in Western Sydney, and I think the infrastructure is going to be there. I reckon it won't be as congested as being in the city, but I reckon it will get more congested. But I think on the flip side of things is I think prices will skyrocket. I just think that, we look at prices today and go, oh yeah, but they only sold for 800, now they want $1 million, that's too high. But I think, really look at the whole of Sydney, and I keep bringing back to is where can you get a house under $1 million? Where can you get a house under 1.2? So from a price point of view, 10 years from now, some areas, I reckon your average price will be probably 1.6, 1.7 million on average, at least.
What's the price today? Average price for a house?
Well, you probably get something for around maybe $1 million. At least, $1 million. So you probably have a $700,000 increase, and I'm talking minimum, in that period of time.
See, really, over the past 15 years, Peter, properties have tripled in value. See, I remember we bought through Stu, we used to buy properties at $300K, and now you're saying they're worth, 1.1 thereabouts. So they've done extremely well. And if you look at generally on average, Sydney property prices, particularly Western Sydney, which is coming from a more affordable base, have done 7% plus to 8%. So if you hold a property, it does 7%, you'll double it in 10 years. And it's no joke. It's pretty simple maths,
Yes. I agree.
For anyone sitting on the fence who's kind of like listening, going, oh, I just don't know, what's your message about buying in Western Sydney right now versus delaying another 12 months? Because I often hear this thing, oh, the market's going to crash, or this is going to happen, or banks will change their policies. What's your advice for anyone that's sitting on the fence?
So the people that are sitting on the fence, the question I ask them is, what are you doing with your money? If it's sitting in a bank account and let's say you've got a 10% deposit or a 20%, do you feel that you'll get a better return in 12 months' time? Most of the time, people say no. So what they'll basically do is, I give them the option is, okay, well, if you don't buy today, that property will jump up maybe 10%. And even let's say it doesn't, it stays the same. it's a long-term gain. So most people are saying, I'm going to buy a property at least 5 years or at least 10 years. So I say to them, if you buy it now, it's like you're planting the seed today, and in 12 months' time, it'll grow a little bit, but then it'll grow further and further. And then sometimes it may stop growing for 2 years, but then it shoots back up. So my advice is, in a nutshell, is to get into property as soon as you can. And yes, you can set and forget it. So you can leave it there, park it there, but it will always go up at some point. Yes, we've been lucky in the last 5 years, especially in Sydney, Western Sydney. We've kept going up and up and up and up and up. And everyone says there's going to be a correction. I said that too a few years ago. But I think what it is now is it just really works on supply and demand. Immigration's open. People are flooding into Australia, and they need somewhere to live. And where can they build? Western Sydney.
Exactly. And last question, you kind of already answered, but what's the best piece of property or investment advice you've ever received, or maybe you'd just like to share with our audience today?
Probably the best advice, I don't know if this would work with some people because, different age groups and that. The best advice I got was, on my 18th birthday, I bought my first property. And I've always believed in property. And I know people buy shares, they buy crypto, they buy all that. But I said the property is your retirement fund. For me, it was my retirement fund. So every year I tried to, invest, to buy properties, pull out equity, do whatever I could to keep buying properties. Just think of it is, yes, there's super out there, but I reckon property is technically my super, and my secret is the more properties I can technically buy, the better now, for when I'm 55 or 60 years of age, I can retire, and that's basically my income.
Wonderful, mate. I couldn't agree with you more. So I've been chatting with Peter Diamantidis from Ray White United Group. Peter, thank you so much for sharing your thoughts, your knowledge today. And by the way, well done on building such a massive portfolio. You're one of the few agents that put their money where their mouth was, into property, mate. Well done.
That's it.
Yeah.
Appreciate it.
So thanks again for being with us today on another edition of the Property Buyer Podcast. Thank you, Peter. We look forward to joining you again with another edition. Bye for now.
Perfect.
With us on another Property Buyer Podcast. If you have a question you'd like to ask, please click on the SpeakPipe link and we'll answer this during the next episode. If you're looking to buy a residential or commercial property in the near future and would like to get the added advantage of having a buyer's advocate on your side, then please reach out to my team today and send us your inquiry, and we'd be delighted to help. Please visit our website at propertybuyer.com.au, where you can stay updated with all my latest market updates, weekly blogs and live suburb profiles to help you make better property decisions. We look forward to connecting with you again on the next Property Buyer Podcast.